Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk to you this morning about air pollution and clean air zones and the potential impact on our industry. But before I do that, I just want to take a few moments just to reflect. So I've been doing this job for about 3.5 years now, and I've been in the industry for 34 years. And I've never known a time where this industry has been faced with so many issues, whether it's Brexit, whether it's congestion on our roads, whether it's a skills shortage, or whether or not it's air pollution. We're all facing these massive issues together at this point in time. I also want to reflect on how important this industry is. And if you look at those statistics up there, 98% of goods consumed in the UK are delivered on a truck at some point in its life or journey. We employ 2.5 million people, 12.2% of the employed population. We're the 5th largest industry in the UK, and yet we're taken for granted all of the time. 124 billion turnover, almost 500,000 HGVs on the road, 600,000 drivers, and most importantly for me, 85% of the operators operating in this sector are actually SME. And I'd like you to think about that as we step through this presentation and we understand the impact of air pollution on our industry. Okay, so air pollution and health. Why is it such a big issue at this point in time? Well, apparently air pollution is currently the largest single environmental health risk. The WHO has stated that air pollution, both indoor and outdoor, is the biggest environmental risk to health and is responsible for around 1 in 9 deaths annually. The International Agency for Research into Cancer has classified outdoor air pollution as carcinogenic for humans and one of the most widespread causes of cancer. And in the UK, the Royal College of Physicians and Royal College of Paediatrics have estimated around 40,000 deaths annually are related to air pollution, and more specifically, nitrogen oxide, better known as NOx. So, a really quick chemistry lesson. When nitrogen is released during fuel combustion, it combines with oxygen atoms to create nitric oxide. This further combines with oxygen to create nitrogen dioxide. Nitric oxide is not considered to be hazardous to health. However, nitrogen dioxide can be. Nitrogen dioxide and nitrogen oxide together are referred to as oxides of nitrogen, better known as NOx, and that's what everybody's talking about at this point in time, NOx. NOx gases react to form smog and acid rain, as well as being central to the formation of particles and ground-level ozone, both of which are associated with adverse health. Nitrogen dioxide is an irritant gas, which at high concentrations causes inflammation of the airways. And children's lung capacity can be reduced with an increased risk of disease such as asthma and bronchitis. This is absolutely what we are hearing, and this is what's been driven by the likes of Client Earth in terms of the reason why government are standing up and listening to them. So NOx emissions, where do they come from? And this is where the balance needs to be given. If you just concentrate on the chart for 2015, you'll see almost 32% of NOx emissions come from combustion within industry, the manufacturing processes. Other transport equates to about 24%, and that other transport is ships, planes, trains. This isn't all about trucks. We've got almost 21%, which is down to public electricity and heating through power stations. And passenger cars equate to about 17%. And there's us as an industry up there, 7.59%. And there's been a reduction since 2013 in terms of NOx. And that's probably down to the rollout of Euro 6. The cleanest emitting, certainly in a HGV, the cleanest emitting vehicle in terms of NOx on the road. So where are the most polluted areas? Well, there's been enormous focus on London. And certainly from our perspective, air pollution is not just about London now, it's about the whole country. Clean air zones will differ in geographical extent. The nature of hotspots and sources of local pollution must be considered carefully for local solutions to be effective. If we take Southampton as one of the cities that's been named on the list of 33, Southampton as a city centre is based very close to a port where there is shipping, there's a railhead, there are trucks, there are cars, but this solution, in terms of cleaning up Southampton, for instance, needs to be focused on what's the root cause. So emissions madness. Scunthorpe has been named as the second most polluted town in the UK in the new WHO report. The town is one of 33 across the country shown to exceed the WHO limit for fine air particles. Welsh towns and cities are amongst the most polluted in Britain. 3 cities and two towns in Wales have been found to be over the World Health Organization limits for air pollution, and the list goes on. So government has lost its third clean air case. In an embarrassing third defeat in successive cases brought by the environmental lawyers Client Earth, backed by Bono and backed by Coldplay, as I understand, the judge declared government's failure to require action from dozens of local authorities with illegal levels of air pollution in England to be unlawful. The judge ordered ministers to instruct local authorities to investigate and identify measures to tackle illegal levels of pollution in 33 towns and cities as soon as possible. And that's now why we're seeing, I guess, a knee-jerk reaction from government. DFT and DEFRA, they're between a rock and a hard place, and with that legal challenge for government, they have to be seen to be doing something. And we as an industry are the first and easiest targets for them to hit. But what have we been doing? Well, if you take this index base from 2013, you will see a steady improvement in terms of NOx emissions from vehicles in the UK. And you'll see the forecast is going to get better because of the rollout of Euro 6 vehicles. But that's a challenge, and that's a real challenge for us as an industry, and particularly for those SMEs. If we look at the fleet makeup, we talked about those 500,000 vehicles at the beginning of this presentation. At the end of 2017, 36% of the UK fleet were actually Euro 6. We've got 64% to get to the optimum number of a complete set of Euro 6 vehicles in the UK. For an SME, that's a real challenge. We've seen an increase in the second-hand cost of a Euro 6 truck. We've seen the collapse of the second-hand market because of the demonisation of diesels. And yet, this financial challenge and this burden is coming back to businesses to make air cleaner. And actually, the reality is it needs to be fixed in a different way. So what's government doing about it right now? Well, government's Joint Air Quality Unit, set up by DEFRA and DFT, has devolved the responsibility to each individual local authority to make their own plans. And there is absolutely no joined-up thinking whatsoever. This could lead to 4 different levels of charging for 7 different categories of vehicles, depending on the local authority. They can also plan for different types of areas, individual roads, specific areas, and also different times of the day. And the Joint Air Quality Unit is focused on all pre-Euro 6 vehicles and is still planning for retrofit. And yet there is no retrofit available for trucks in the UK. And if there were, the estimates at the moment are talking about £25,000 to £30,000. That's unrealistic. There's a risk that these 33 local authorities will be forced to come up with plans very quickly and inevitably leading to poor policy decisions. Let's give you an example. This could lead to a situation where a HGV could make a delivery or collection in 3 cities or 2-3 cities in one day. Stoke, Leicester, Wolverhampton, each with its own set of standards, each with its own set of charges, creating complexity and confusion for our industry. So what does the industry need to do, and what are we doing right now? Well, the RHA is working really hard to highlight the impact on our industry with DFT and DEFRA. If government wants clean air quickly, they need to support our industry, not penalise it with fines and increases in the road haulage levy. Government must provide a HGV scrappage scheme that works for our industry and recognises the challenges that we're facing. A phased approach is absolutely essential. It needs to give us time to plan. This is going to be less disruptive for our sector. We need to avoid a knee-jerk reaction that actually moves volume to vans, which is actually going to increase congestion and pollution. No bans or restrictions on vehicles less than 12 years old. Government needs to provide local authorities with a single framework that they can all work to. We're perfectly placed as an organisation to try and help shape their thinking and make sure that we've got a transition plan for this industry that ultimately works and doesn't drive cost into your organisations. If we think about that financial impact for a moment as well, London's ultra-low emission zone, ULEZ, goes live in 2019. They're going to fine any HGV vehicle that comes into London that's non-compliant, so Euro 6 or below, £100 per day for going in. An average SME might make 60, maybe £100 profit per truck per week. It doesn't take the brain of Britain to work out that these businesses are going to be out of business pretty quickly if they can't pass that cost on. ULEZ in London and other proposals are unrealistic in seeking to ban Euro 5 trucks, as they were only new as recently as 2013. The economic life of a truck can be up to 12 years. This can be even longer for specialised vehicles. If this approach is taken in the cities around the country, the financial impact on our industry is potentially enormous. But don't take my word for it. I'm going to hand over to Rod McKenzie. He's been talking to some of our members.
Politicians in places like this appear to be gunning for the road haulage industry. And it's not just Westminster either. As we've heard from Richard, there are more than 30 local authorities that are planning fines for vehicles that don't meet Euro 6 emission standards. We think that's unfair. That money will go into local authority coffers, and we think that's a tax on business. But don't just take the RHA's word for it. Hear from some of our members and what they think.
Air quality issues can affect our purchasing policies, particularly with the uncertainty around the cities that are going to potentially create low emission zones, because it's still an unknown quantity. Apart from London, there's uncertainty in the country about what low emission zones are going to be in place and what they'll require. For example, in Sheffield, there may be a low emission zone as early as next year. If they're put as Euro 6, it will affect where we have some of our vehicles, because obviously we run Euro 5 and Euro 6 vehicles at the moment, and we need to make sure that we've got the Euro 6 vehicles in the right place. A lot of people run urban vehicles for a lot longer, so we often run our urban vehicles for 10 years, so we really needed a few years notice for these to come inside so we could plan for it.
I am concerned about the financial impact both on our business and on the industry. The problems that are occurring are that various measures are being proposed by differing authorities. So London, Manchester and Leeds are all looking at different measures. We need consistency in terms of the measures that are being proposed so that they can be developed into a vehicle that will suit all of those areas, rather than find that we have a vehicle that can go into London, a separate vehicle that can go into Manchester and Leeds. We just need greater clarity and very quickly.
Okay, so you've heard from some of our members and you've heard what their views and their opinions are on this. I'd like to ask you the question. Are you concerned that the measures being taken to improve air quality will have a financial negative effect or impact on your business? If you can take up your keypads and vote, 1 yes, 2 no. Wow. I think that says it all. I think that just reinforces the concern that you've all got in terms of the financial ramifications of us not getting this right and making sure that this industry isn't penalised. So in summary, air quality has to be addressed. I think we accept that. But it's not just about vehicles. You go back to that original slide where you see that breakdown of where air pollution comes from. Any new restrictions need to be faced and based on vehicle life. Retrofit requirements need to be cautiously handled. But there needs to be greater focus on the hotspots. We need to work with government to reduce congestion. We've got some of the most congested roads in the UK at the moment. We need to encourage more out-of-hours deliveries to ease that congestion and ease the burden. The phasing of changes through Euro standards is absolutely critical to us making this work and making sure that we don't suffer as an industry. But that consideration for non-transport generators from a government perspective absolutely isn't there. We are the easy target. We're the ones that are being hit, and we need to push back on that, and we need to get some balance back in this argument. If government wants to go faster, they need to support the industry, not penalise it. And that's an industry that moves 98% of everything we consume in the UK. We all want cleaner air, but we need a balanced approach and not at any cost. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Richard. Now, this feels a lot like wrestling with a mattress full of treacle. 33 potentially different set of standards across the country. What are you going to do, and what do you advise the industry to do to just lobby for more balance and fairness? So we need your help. We need your help to lobby, and we need your interaction. You know, lobbying, campaigning, it's not a technical kind of issue, really. It's a bit like a blunt instrument. So you need to engage with your politicians, your local MPs. You need to raise this as a specific issue and say, you know, there needs to be balance to this argument, so that we can get those MPs to, you know, actually lobby ministers in government, listen to the industry, listen to what we're saying, and listen to the balanced argument that we need to drive through. So we need your interaction, we need your support to do that. There is a real risk to the economy here, though, isn't there? If we're talking about 15 to 20,000 just to retrofit, and then the replacement cycle on truck, what's that, 100, 110 sometimes, this is going to drive a lot of companies to the wall. Absolutely.
I think that statistic about 85% of this industry being SME, you know, the SMEs absolutely rely on the second-hand market. They can ill afford to roll out brand new trucks. If we're facing, you know, kind of punitive measures from government in terms of demanding that you've got to buy a new truck in order to, you know, to function, well, either the market moves and shifts, which is highly unlikely, or we're going to see businesses go out of business. So we've got to get government to listen to this. We've got to get them to understand the real challenges that the industry is facing every day, every week.
It's interesting when Richard spoke earlier about the 40,000 premature deaths due to NOx and particulates. And I've done some work on this. And if you look at the European Environmental Agency report, where that 40,000 figure was first originated, it's premature, so everybody's death is premature, so drill it down and it comes as years of life lost. But if you do it across the 500 million people in Europe, as an average time lost from life, it actually comes down to half an hour. And if you look at what the EU wants, which is 40 grams squared of NOx all over Europe, the improvement in life expectancy is 3.5 hours. So we've really, really got to get this science exact and not allow what could be just a mischievous headline and an executive summary dictate and demolish an entire industry. And you're absolutely right. We do need to clean our air, particularly roadside pollution, but we need to do it in a measured, fair, and balanced way. One final question: what would be the scope of the proposed scrappage scheme, age, etc., and the Euro classification?
Well, I think the challenge that again we face, if you buy a brand new truck, you're talking about 80 to 100,000 pounds in terms of outlay. There's a gap here that needs to be bridged between what's affordable and what the industry can afford. We've been having conversations with DFT and DEFRA about this, and I think it's fair to say that the numbers are eye-watering in terms of what they're going to need to stomp up. But if you look at the second-hand market compared to a brand new truck, there's a big differential in terms of cost. We've got to find a way of bridging that, and there needs to be a mechanism. So, we'll carry on having the conversations with government. We'll try and find a way, but we'll try and find a mechanism that works for everyone.
And one final question that's just come in here. Does the RHA have any idea of what emission standards would be applicable in the other 33 low emission zones proposed?
Right. So I think it's fair to say that that's chaotic. It's a complete mess, to be perfectly honest with you. There is no clarity, and we're seeking to get clarity, but it's so disjointed. We're urging government to take a more central role in terms of helping support that and build that framework. So we do have clarity, but at the moment we don't.
That would be a no then?
Yes.
All right. Richard, thank you very much indeed.